The sun was just beginning to rise over the rugged coastline where the Navy SEAL training camp was nestled. Jagged cliffs plunged sharply into the roaring Pacific below, their craggy faces etched by years of relentless waves and wind. The salty air carried the scent of the ocean, sharp and bracing, awakening every nerve. It was a place where nature's unforgiving power met the most grueling human endurance tests, and where dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL were either forged or shattered. Among the scattered tents and makeshift obstacles stood a group of trainees, their faces a mixture of fatigue and determination. The early morning chill didn't faze them. Neither did the ache in their muscles from the previous day's punishing drills. For these men and women, this camp was their crucible, the ultimate proving ground. Among them was a young woman named Emily Parker. At 28, she was older than most of the trainees, but that only fueled her quiet confidence. Emily's journey to this remote cliffside had been anything but ordinary. Raised in a small town in the Midwest, she had grown up hiking rocky trails and climbing the towering grain silos of her family's farm, skills that would unexpectedly serve her well here. But her dream to become a Navy SEAL had met resistance early on. Friends doubted her. Family worried. The military itself had only recently opened doors for women in combat roles like this. Still, Emily had pressed on. Today, as she tightened the straps of her boots and adjusted her gear, Emily's mind was calm but focused. This was no time for hesitation. The SEALs demanded not just strength, but precision, mental toughness, and the ability to adapt when everything seemed stacked against you. She glanced at her fellow trainees, young men who were visibly bigger and more muscular, some sneering quietly at the idea of a woman being there at all. But Emily didn't let it distract her. Instead, she used it as fuel. Captain Harris, the lead instructor, strode in front of the group, his voice booming over the crashing surf. "Listen up." His tone was sharp, commanding immediate attention. "This cliff behind me, it's more than just a rock face. It's a test. A test of skill, strength, and heart. We don't want excuses. We want warriors. Those who climb it with rope. Those who do it without. Those who get to the top and look back at the storm they conquered." The trainees exchanged nervous glances. The cliff was infamous among previous classes. Many had failed. Some had fallen, and only a few had succeeded without safety gear. Emily's heart pounded. This was the moment she had trained for. The instructors moved among the trainees, checking their equipment and offering terse advice. For Emily, every word was a reminder. This was her chance to prove herself, not just to the SEALs, but to herself. The camp was alive with the sounds of preparation. Ropes snapped against rock, boots thudded against the dirt, and orders barked across the air. Emily found a quiet moment to take in the surroundings. The dark green of the pine trees clinging stubbornly to the cliff's edge. The swirling mist below masking the crashing waves. The cold sting of the ocean breeze. This place was raw and wild, a perfect mirror for the journey ahead. As the sun climbed higher, the instructors called the trainees to line up. Emily felt her pulse quicken as she took her place among the group. The task was clear. Scale the cliff face using only their hands and feet, no ropes allowed today. It was a new challenge, meant to test not just physical strength, but trust in one's own body and instincts. The trainees were not just climbing rock. They were climbing their fears, their doubts, and every expectation placed upon them. Captain Harris addressed the group once more, his eyes locking on Emily for a brief moment. "You're not here because it's easy. You're here because you're strong enough. Show us." The first climbers stepped forward, their movements cautious but confident. Emily watched as the men ascended, muscles flexing, faces grim with concentration. Some reached the top with relative ease, while others slipped and had to be helped down. The cliff was unforgiving, every foothold treacherous, every slip potentially disastrous. When it was Emily's turn, she moved toward the rock with quiet determination. Her hands found small crevices, fingers curling tightly around rough edges. Her boots searched for solid footholds, toes gripping the stone like a hawk's talons. The wind tugged at her gear, the cold biting into her skin. Every inch upward was a battle, a negotiation between will and gravity. Halfway up, a sudden gust caught her off guard. For a heart-stopping moment, she slipped. Her heart soared into her throat as she felt herself begin to fall. Then, instinct took over. She locked her fingers into a narrow crack, halted her descent, and steadied her breathing. Around her, the silence was thick with shock and awe. This moment marked a shift. Emily wasn't just a trainee. She was a fighter refusing to be broken. She pushed herself upward, muscles burning, skin scraping against unforgiving rock. The other trainees below watched, some whispering in disbelief, others nodding with respect. When Emily finally pulled herself over the cliff's edge, the world seemed to hold its breath. She lay there for a moment, chest heaving, a smile breaking across her dirt-smudged face. She had conquered the cliff, but more importantly, she had conquered the doubt inside herself. Captain Harris approached slowly, a rare softness in his eyes. "Well done," he said simply. "You're stronger than you know." The other trainees gathered around, some clapping, others nodding with grudging admiration. Emily stood tall, her body aching but her spirit soaring. This was only the beginning of her journey, but it was a powerful start. That night, as the camp settled under a blanket of stars, Emily sat alone by the fire. The crackling flames flickered against her determined face. She thought about the climb, the moments when fear almost claimed her, and the fierce resolve that had saved her. This training was more than a physical challenge. It was a transformation. The cliffs, the ocean, the pain, and the triumph, all were becoming part of her story. And she knew that the real test was yet to come. The morning sun barely pierced through the dense fog that rolled in from the Pacific, casting a ghostly gray over the cliffs. Emily Parker tightened the straps on her harness and took a deep breath. Today was not just another day of grueling physical drills. It was the day the instructors had been building toward, the day that would push every trainee beyond the limits of fear and endurance. "Today's exercise is unlike any you've done before," Captain Harris announced as the group gathered near the edge of the towering cliff. His voice, always stern, held a sharp edge today, a clear warning that this challenge was no joke. "You will climb the cliff face. No ropes, no safety nets, no second chances." A collective gasp rippled through the group. Emily could see the flicker of doubt in the eyes of some trainees, especially the younger recruits. For many, this cliff was already legendary, a sheer wall of stone rising over 100 feet straight out of the earth. Climbing it without safety equipment was a feat even seasoned climbers would hesitate to attempt. Emily's heart beat faster, but there was no room for hesitation. Years of training had prepared her for moments like this, even if her mind sometimes doubted it. She glanced around at her peers. Some looked ready to bolt. Others steeled themselves, jaws clenched in grim determination. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Captain Harris paced before them. "We don't want to hear excuses. This is about mental grit, physical power, and instinct. The cliff doesn't care if you're scared. It only responds to your actions." Then the final warning. "If you fall, you're on your own. We'll pull you out if possible, but you must treat this as a fight for your life." The words hung heavy in the damp morning air. The stakes couldn't be higher. Emily felt her pulse race as the first trainee stepped forward, a burly man named Jackson, known for his strength, but not his finesse. He planted his hands on the rock and began to ascend. His movement was deliberate, but slow. The rock face was slick from last night's rain, and his fingers slipped once, sending a shudder of fear through the watching group. Jackson's fall was sudden. His body slammed against the cliff a few feet down before he caught himself with one hand in a narrow crack. For a moment, everyone held their breath, fearing the worst. Then he pulled himself back up, gritted his teeth, and continued climbing. Emily watched every detail, the way his muscles tensed, how he recalibrated his grip. It was clear this challenge was not only physical, but a mental chess game with the unforgiving rock. Next up was another man, Ramirez, known for his agility. He moved quickly, almost like a spider scaling the stone. But halfway up, he reached for a handhold that gave way. His body swung outward, and the sound of his boots scraping against rock echoed. He managed to find another grip and steady himself, but the shock of the fall was obvious. One by one, the trainees took their turns, some succeeding, others slipping and struggling. The cliff was demanding, unforgiving. Some froze halfway up, their hands shaking with fear, while others pushed through exhaustion and climbed higher. Finally, it was Emily's turn. The moment her boots touched the base of the cliff, a hush fell over the crowd. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, some doubtful, others curious. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. This was more than just a physical climb. It was a battle against the invisible barriers that told her she didn't belong here. Her hands found the first holds, jagged and rough, biting into her palms. She placed her feet carefully, balancing her weight. The cliff was slippery, the moisture from the ocean breeze, making it a challenge unlike any indoor climb she had ever done. Halfway up, a sudden wind gust rattled the air. Emily's grip faltered. For a terrifying moment, she felt her fingers slip from the rock. The world tilted as she fell. A brief, heart-stopping drop before her survival instincts kicked in. With lightning-fast reflexes, she grabbed a small ledge, fingers scraping painfully against the stone. Her body dangled precariously, the cold ocean breeze biting into her skin. The other trainees below gasped in unison. "Hold on!" Someone shouted. Emily gritted her teeth, ignoring the burning in her arms and the fear clawing at her chest. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to pull herself back up, finger by finger, inch by inch. Her breath came in shallow gasps as the rock scraped her skin raw. Each movement was a fight, against gravity, against doubt, against every voice that had ever told her she wasn't strong enough. Her legs found new footholds, and she pushed upward, muscles screaming in protest. The cliff seemed to test her every step, offering no mercy. But Emily's mind was clear, focused only on the next hold, the next pull, the next breath. When she reached a narrow outcrop halfway up, she paused briefly to steady herself, wiping sweat and tears from her face. Her body ached, but her spirit soared. The instructors below exchanged surprised looks. This wasn't just survival. It was an extraordinary display of resilience and skill. But the challenge was far from over. Suddenly, a sharp command echoed from above. "Off your ropes!" Captain Harris's voice boomed. Emily's eyes widened. They hadn't mentioned ropes before, but it seemed the instructors had added a brutal twist. She was expected to climb the rest of the cliff without any safety gear, relying solely on her hands, feet, and nerve. The ropes that had offered a lifeline were swiftly removed by the support team. Emily's heart thundered in her chest, adrenaline flooding her veins. There was no turning back. With a deep breath, she shifted her weight and began the ascent anew, this time free and exposed. The cliff face was merciless. Every muscle in her body screamed for relief, every joint burned with exertion. But Emily refused to look down. She focused only on the rock above, the next hold, the steady rhythm of climb. Higher and higher she went, the ocean below a dizzying blur. Her fingers bled from the rough surface, and her legs trembled, but she pushed through every moment of weakness. Halfway up, disaster struck. Her hand slipped on a slick patch of rock, and Emily found herself falling again. But this time, no rope to save her. Time slowed as her body dropped, the cold air whipping past her face. Then, with lightning-fast reflexes born of years of training and sheer willpower, she caught herself on a small ledge, barely big enough for her fingers. Pain shot through her arms and wrists, but she held on, refusing to let go. The crowd below erupted in shocked silence, followed by an awed whisper. Emily steadied her breath and began the climb once more, every inch a testament to human grit. The final stretch was the hardest. Her arms trembled violently, her legs felt like they would buckle, and her skin was raw and bleeding. But the top was so close she could taste it. With one final surge of strength, Emily pulled herself over the edge, collapsing onto the rocky summit, chest heaving and eyes wide with disbelief and triumph. For a moment, all was still. Then Captain Harris approached, his usually stern face breaking into a rare, approving smile. "You did it. Against all odds, you climbed the cliff without ropes." The other trainees gathered around, faces a mix of admiration and disbelief. Emily had done what few had. She had conquered not just the cliff, but every doubt about her abilities. That day marked a turning point. The instructors began to see her not just as a trainee, but as a warrior, one who could teach them about courage, resilience, and defying expectations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cliff, Emily knew this was only the beginning. The ultimate challenge had tested her in ways she never imagined, and she had passed. But she also understood the greatest battles were yet to come. The cliff's edge was both a battleground and a classroom. Emily lay there for a moment, her chest heaving, her muscles trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. The world below, the restless ocean, and the jagged rocks seemed distant, unreal. She had climbed without ropes, survived a near fall, and reached the summit of a sheer, merciless cliff. But something deeper was unfolding now, beyond the physical feat, a transformation in how she was seen, and more importantly, how she saw herself. The other trainees gathered around her, their faces etched with disbelief and newfound respect. Some offered tentative nods. Others simply stared, speechless. The instructors whispered among themselves, exchanging glances heavy with surprise and admiration. Emily's accomplishment wasn't just remarkable because she was a woman. It was remarkable because it was unprecedented. Captain Harris approached, his usual steely demeanor softened by a hint of wonder. "You climbed without ropes," he said quietly, almost as if testing the words. "That's not just skill, it's instinct and heart. You've shown us something today, something none of us expected." Emily looked up, sweat mingling with dirt on her face, and managed a tired smile. "I just didn't want to fall," she said simply. But she knew it was more than that. Every moment on the cliff had been a fight, not only against gravity, but against doubt, fear, and every barrier she'd ever faced. As the instructors helped her down from the summit, Emily felt a quiet shift among the group. The cliff had tested them all, but she had passed a new threshold. What was once seen as impossible was now a lived reality. That night, back at camp, the energy among the trainees was electric. Around the fire, stories and rumors circulated quickly. "Did you see Emily? She climbed without a rope." One whispered. Another laughed incredulously. "That's madness. Who even does that?" But beneath the chatter was a growing recognition. Emily had changed the game. The instructors held a meeting away from the trainees, discussing what they had witnessed. They knew Navy SEALs had always been trained to adapt, to improvise when equipment failed. But this climb, This daring maneuver had unveiled a raw, untapped potential. If a trainee could scale a cliff without ropes, what other limits could be shattered? The following day's training took on a new tone. Emily was no longer just a trainee struggling to keep pace. She was a symbol, a beacon of resilience and adaptability. The instructors incorporated lessons from her climb into the program, challenging others to test their instincts in ways they never had before. For Emily, however, the climb was only part of the story. The days ahead would push her to reconcile her physical achievements with the emotional and mental battles simmering beneath the surface. The early morning fog had barely lifted when the group gathered again, this time for an obstacle course designed to simulate real combat conditions. Mud, barbed wire, uneven terrain, the course tested everything from agility to endurance to mental fortitude. Emily moved through it with the same determination she'd shown on the cliff, but inside, a quiet tension brewed. She could feel the weight of expectations from the instructors, her peers, and herself. The climb had raised the bar, but it had also placed a spotlight on her in a way she hadn't anticipated. Whispers followed her steps. Eyes tracked her every move, and sometimes she caught the flicker of doubt in the corners of her own mind. Was she strong enough to live up to this new standard? Could she keep pushing forward when the pain and fatigue threatened to overwhelm? The obstacle course ended with a water survival exercise, a chilling plunge into the cold Pacific, simulating a forced ocean landing. Emily's body shivered violently as she broke the surface, but her mind stayed sharp. She recalled her training, the countless drills to keep calm and conserve energy in freezing water. Moments like these separated the prepared from the overwhelmed, and she was determined to belong to the former. Emerging from the waves, she felt a surge of quiet pride. This was the life she had chosen, demanding, dangerous, unforgiving, and she was ready to meet it head-on. But the real test came later that day, during a debriefing session, when Captain Harris gathered the trainees. "Emily's climb has opened our eyes," he said, addressing the group with unusual gravity. "It's a reminder that SEALs must be ready for the unexpected, must trust their instincts even when the tools and equipment fail." He paused, scanning the room. The cliff was a lesson in survival without safety nets, literal and figurative. Every one of you needs to think beyond the obvious. Prepare for the moment when things go wrong. That's what makes a SEAL. Emily listened, the weight of those words sinking in. This wasn't just training anymore. It was preparation for life and death situations, where failure meant more than just a bruise or a lost exercise. It was about survival, leadership, and pushing the limits of human endurance. Over the following weeks, Emily's climb became a case study within the camp. Trainees were encouraged to attempt ropeless climbs on smaller obstacles. The instructors refined their methods, incorporating lessons on mental toughness, trust in one's own body, and quick problem-solving under pressure. But Emily's journey wasn't without setbacks. The physical toll of the climb and the relentless training began to show. Her hands bore fresh cuts and blisters. Her muscles ached in places she didn't know existed. Some nights, exhaustion and pain blurred the edges of her resolve. Yet, through every hardship, she found renewed strength. Her fellow trainees, once skeptical, began to approach her with a mixture of respect and camaraderie. Some sought advice, others offered quiet support during the hardest moments. Slowly, Emily became not only a symbol of resilience, but a leader in the making. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, Emily found herself alone at the cliff's base again. She traced the rock face with her fingers, recalling the climb, the slips, the falls, the desperate grips. It was more than a physical challenge. It was a metaphor for everything she had fought against in her life. Her mind drifted to the family and friends who had doubted her, the barrier society placed in front of her simply because she was a woman. Here, on this rugged cliff, those barriers felt like mere shadows, easily overcome by will and skill. As darkness settled in, Emily made a silent promise. The climb was just the beginning. She would push further, harder, and break every limit set before her. Back at camp, the instructors prepared the next phase of training, even more intense, more dangerous. The cliff climb had been a milestone, but now Emily and her peers were expected to carry the lessons forward, applying them in simulated missions that blurred the line between training and real combat. Emily's story, the climb without ropes, the near fall, the raw determination, was becoming legend within the SEAL ranks. It challenged everyone to rethink what was possible, to question assumptions, and to embrace the unpredictable. And for Emily, it was a revelation. Strength wasn't just about muscles or skill. It was about heart, grit, and the courage to hold on when everything else wanted to let go. The ultimate challenge wasn't the cliff itself. It was the fight to believe in oneself when the world doubted you most. The days following Emily's unprecedented ropeless climb were filled with a mixture of exhaustion, triumph, and quiet reflection. For the trainees, the climb had become a benchmark, a story repeated around campfires and in hushed conversations. But for Emily, the climb was only one part of a much larger journey, a step that led her to an unexpected challenge far more daunting than any cliff. The cliff face had tested her physical strength and courage. What awaited her now would test her resilience in an entirely different way. The descent. Descending a cliff is often more dangerous than climbing it. Gravity becomes a cruel adversary, and the mind, already fatigued, can betray the body in the smallest moments of hesitation. The instructors had warned them about this. Getting down is just as important as getting up, Captain Harris had said. One mistake, one slip, and the climb means nothing. Emily had never imagined that the moment she feared most wasn't falling upwards, but falling downwards, the slow, deliberate, agonizing climb back to base camp after pushing her body beyond every limit. On the morning of the descent, the camp was wrapped in a heavy fog, the Pacific's chill lingering in the air. The usual bustle of activity was replaced with a quiet focus, the kind that precedes something serious. Emily's body ached from the previous day's exertions, every muscle screaming in protest. Yet she knew that today, more than ever, mental strength would be her greatest ally. As the group prepared to descend, ropes were again distributed, but this time, the instructors stressed the importance of trust in the equipment, in themselves, and in each other. The descent would require coordinated teamwork, precise communication, and a calm mind. Emily fastened her harness carefully, fingers numb but steady. Her eyes scanned the edge of the cliff, the rocky face stretching beneath her, a daunting reminder of the challenge ahead. The ocean below crashed relentlessly, the sound both intimidating and oddly comforting. Captain Harris approached, his expression unreadable. "Remember," he said quietly, "descend like your life depends on it." Because it does. One by one, the trainees began their descent, voices clipped and commands sharp. The ropes creaked, hands gripped rough rock, and feet found tiny footholds. The process was slow, methodical, and terrifying. Emily's turn came. She gripped the rope tightly, feeling the tension in every fiber of her being. Slowly, she lowered herself over the edge, her feet searching for the first foothold. The cold wind whipped past, threatening to throw her balance. Halfway down, her foot slipped on a loose stone. Time seemed to slow as she fought to regain control. Her hands burned from gripping the rope too tightly, but she refused to panic. Instead, she focused on her breathing, steadying her mind. As she descended, Emily's thoughts drifted. This moment was more than a physical test. It was symbolic of her entire journey. The climb up the cliff was a triumph over doubt and fear. The descent was a lesson in humility and perseverance. Suddenly, A shout rang out from below. "Watch out!" It was Ramirez, warning her of a shifting rock. Emily's heart leapt as the stone tumbled past her, narrowly missing her. The incident jolted her alertness, reminding her that the cliff was a living, unpredictable entity. The descent continued, each movement deliberate, every breath measured. When Emily finally reached solid ground, relief flooded her like a tidal wave. But the day was far from over. Back at camp, as the trainees gathered for a debriefing, Captain Harris addressed the group. Today was a reminder: survival isn't just about strength or courage. It's about trust. Trust in your equipment, your team, and most importantly, in yourself. Emily listened intently, feeling the weight of his words settle deep inside her. The climb had been her moment of glory, but the descent taught her a different kind of strength, the strength to surrender control, to accept help, and to keep moving forward despite fear. That evening, as the campfire flickered and shadows danced across the faces of her fellow trainees, Emily found herself reflecting on her journey. The obstacles, the climbs, the falls, they were metaphors for a deeper battle she fought every day. The battle to prove herself in a world that often doubted her because of her gender. The battle to trust her own instincts when others expected her to fail. Then came a moment that changed everything. Captain Harris approached Emily quietly, away from the group. "You've done something remarkable," he said, his voice low. "But there's one thing you need to understand. Being a SEAL isn't just about physical feats. It's about adaptability, leadership, and sometimes it's about knowing when to rely on others." Emily nodded, sensing the truth in his words. The next day brought a surprise exercise. The instructors led the trainees to a new challenge, a towering vertical rock wall far more complex than the cliff. But this time, the rules were different. "Ropes are optional," Captain Harris said. "You may use them if you choose, but if you can climb without, you'll gain invaluable skills." The room buzzed with uncertainty. Many opted for the safety of ropes, hesitant to risk another free climb. Emily, however, felt a familiar fire ignite within her. She chose to climb without. As she scaled the wall, the physical strain was immense, but the real test was mental. Without ropes, every move required focus, confidence, and trust in her body's ability. The wall was steep, holes smaller and more distant than the cliff. The wind was stronger, whipping her hair and chilling her skin. Halfway up, Emily's fingers began to slip. For a moment, fear flashed, but then she remembered her descent, the lesson of trust. She adjusted her grip, breathed deeply, and moved carefully upward. When she reached the top, her heart pounded fiercely. The instructors and trainees below erupted into cheers and applause. Captain Harris gave a rare smile of approval. "You're proving something important," he said later, pulling her aside. "You're showing that courage isn't just about braving danger alone. It's about knowing your limits, trusting yourself, and pushing past them." Emily realized then that her journey was not just about physical endurance. It was about growth, emotional, mental, and spiritual. That night, as the camp settled into silence, Emily lay awake under a canopy of stars. She thought about the climbs, the falls, and the lessons learned. The cliff was a metaphor for her life, the challenges, the risks, and the unexpected moments that defined her. She knew the path ahead would be tough, filled with trials that would test every part of her. But she also knew one thing with unwavering certainty. She was ready. The descent from the cliff was more than a physical challenge. It was a revelation. The revelation that true strength comes not just from conquering the mountain, but from embracing the journey, every rise and every fall, with courage, humility, and heart. The weeks that followed Emily's cliff climb and arduous descent were transformative, not just for her, but for everyone in the training camp. What had started as a grueling physical test evolved into a profound journey of self-discovery, resilience, and leadership. For Emily, the turning point was approaching, one that would challenge every fiber of her being and define her place in the elite ranks of the Navy SEALs. Training intensified as the instructors began to push the group harder than ever. Days were packed with combat drills, navigation exercises, underwater survival, and mental endurance challenges designed to push limits and forge warriors. The trainees were pushed to the edge physically, mentally, and emotionally, but Emily seemed to thrive amid the chaos. She moved with quiet confidence, her earlier fears replaced by a steely determination that inspired others. Still, there was a restlessness beneath her surface. The cliff climb and free descent had tested her in ways she never imagined, but she sensed that her greatest challenge was yet to come. Something deep inside urged her to prepare, not just for the physical trials, but for the weight of leadership that she would soon have to shoulder. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling navigation exercise, Captain Harris called the group together. The trainees gathered in a clearing surrounded by dense forest, the air thick with humidity and tension. Harris's usual stern face was softened by a rare smile. "Tomorrow," he announced, "you'll face what we call the Hell Week simulation. It's a condensed, intense version of the real Hell Week, designed to test your limits. You'll endure minimal sleep, physical exhaustion, and mental pressure. Only those who can endure and lead will survive." The words sent a ripple of anxiety through the group. Hell Week was infamous, the crucible that separated the truly elite from the rest. For Emily, the announcement confirmed what she had suspected. This was the turning point she had been preparing for. That night, Emily lay in her bunk, the sounds of the camp fading into the background. Her mind raced with thoughts: the climb, the descent, the lessons learned, and the grueling week ahead. She knew this was where everything would be decided. As dawn broke, the group was awakened with little warning. They had barely slept, and the fog still clung to the forest floor as they began the relentless exercises of Hell Week. From the very first moment, the pressure was unrelenting. The trainees moved through obstacle courses, carrying heavy loads, swimming in freezing water, and navigating through dense wilderness with little rest or food. Every step was a test of will, every breath a battle against exhaustion. Emily's body screamed in protest, her muscles aching with fatigue and her mind clouded with sleep deprivation. But what set her apart was her ability to focus amid the chaos, to push through pain and exhaustion when others faltered. Throughout Hell Week, Emily found herself stepping into leadership roles she hadn't expected. When one trainee collapsed from exhaustion, she was there to support and encourage. When the group faced navigational challenges, her clear-headed decisions kept them on course. Her courage and resilience became a beacon, inspiring others to dig deeper and push harder. On the fourth day, during a grueling night exercise, the group was tasked with a simulated hostage rescue mission deep in the forest. The trainees had to navigate hostile terrain, communicate under pressure, and make split-second decisions that could mean life or death. Emily took the lead. Her mind was sharp despite exhaustion, her commands calm and precise. The team moved with purpose, covering each other, adapting to obstacles, and overcoming simulated enemy fire. At one point, the group was ambushed in a narrow ravine. Bullets whizzed past, and panic threatened to take hold. But Emily kept her cool. She directed her teammates to take cover, coordinated a counterattack, and led the rescue team to safety. By dawn, the mission was complete. The trainees were battered, weary, but victorious. In the debriefing, Captain Harris praised Emily's leadership. "You didn't just survive Hell Week, you led through it. That's what makes a SEAL: strength, courage, and the ability to inspire others, even in the darkest moments." Emily felt a surge of pride, but also a deep sense of responsibility. This was no longer just about proving herself. It was about leading others through the most intense challenges imaginable. That night, as she lay under the stars, Emily reflected on how far she had come. From the nervous trainee unsure if she belonged to the fearless leader guiding others through chaos, it was a transformation forged through sweat, pain, and sheer will. Her thoughts turned to the future. The Navy SEALs were more than a team. They were a brotherhood, a force that relied on trust, resilience, and unbreakable spirit. Emily had earned her place, but she knew the journey was far from over. The turning point was not a single moment, but a series of trials that revealed who she truly was. A warrior, a leader, and above all, someone who refused to be defined by doubt or fear. As the camp settled into uneasy quiet, Emily knew the next steps would test her even more. But she was ready, because she had learned that true strength wasn't just about what you could endure alone. It was about how you lifted others when they couldn't stand. And in the end, that was what made a Navy SEAL. After surviving the grueling Hell Week simulation, Emily was no longer just a trainee on the margins. She was a leader, a symbol, and a force to be reckoned with. But with her rising prominence came new challenges. The barriers she faced were no longer just physical or mental. They were deeply entrenched in the culture of the SEAL program itself. The military, like many institutions, had long been dominated by tradition. The Navy SEALs, known for their elite toughness and brotherhood, had few women who had dared to enter their ranks. Though training was supposed to be meritocratic, whispers and skepticism shadowed Emily's every step. Some trainees openly questioned her capabilities. Others, more subtle in their doubts, withheld trust in critical moments. Emily had faced doubt before friends and family who questioned her decision to join, the physical challenges that pushed her body to its limits. But this felt different. This was a fight not only for survival, but for acceptance. The unspoken rules of the group were a maze she had to navigate, balancing the need to prove herself without alienating those around her. The camp's environment was relentless. Every drill, every mission simulation, every early morning wake-up call was a reminder that she had to be twice as good to be seen as equal. But Emily's resolve only hardened. One morning, during a tactical exercise simulating urban combat, Emily found herself paired with Lieutenant Jackson, a seasoned SEAL known for his skeptical views on women in combat roles. His sharp glances and curt commands made it clear he didn't expect much from her. As they advanced through the mock cityscape dodging imaginary gunfire, clearing buildings, and securing hostages, Emily felt the weight of his judgment. But instead of retreating, she pushed herself harder, moving with precision and focus. When Jackson hesitated at a critical moment, Emily took the lead, signaling the team forward with confidence. By the end of the exercise, their team had achieved a flawless victory. Jackson's skepticism turned into reluctant respect, though he didn't voice it openly. Later, during a debriefing, Captain Harris addressed the entire group. Leadership isn't about rank or history. It's about actions. Today, Emily demonstrated what true leadership looks like. We follow those who act with courage and clarity, not those who cling to old biases. The words resonated deeply with Emily and the group. It was a public acknowledgement that barriers were being broken, not just for her, but for all who followed. Despite these victories, the path wasn't easy. Emily encountered moments of isolation, quiet moments when the pressure seemed overwhelming. In the evenings, she would retreat to a small clearing near the camp, a place she had claimed as her sanctuary. One night, as the stars glittered overhead, Emily's thoughts drifted to the women who had paved the way before her, the pioneers who had broken barriers in other military branches, in law enforcement, and in history. Their courage fueled her determination. The following weeks brought even tougher challenges. The instructors introduced advanced survival scenarios, requiring the trainees to operate for days with limited supplies, navigating hostile terrain, and managing both physical and psychological stress. During one intense scenario deep in the wilderness, Emily's leadership was tested like never before. A sudden storm swept through the camp, turning trails into mudslides and making navigation nearly impossible. The group became disoriented, tensions flared, and exhaustion threatened to break their spirit. Emily stepped forward. With calm authority, she rallied her teammates, establishing a plan to find shelter and ration supplies. She delegated tasks based on individual strengths and kept morale high by reminding the group of their shared purpose. As night fell, the trainees huddled in makeshift shelters, battered but united. Emily's leadership had been the anchor that held them together. Word of her ability to lead under pressure spread quickly through the camp. Slowly, the resistance to her presence diminished, replaced by growing respect and acceptance. Trainees who had once doubted her now sought her advice and looked to her for guidance. But Emily knew that breaking barriers wasn't just about winning respect, it was about changing hearts and minds. She began to engage with her peers in deeper conversations, sharing her experiences and listening to theirs. These moments of connection built bridges and fostered a culture of inclusion within the camp. Outside of training, Emily also advocated for changes in the program's approach to gender diversity. She worked with instructors to develop training, modifications that addressed physiological differences, without lowering standards, ensuring that every trainee had the best chance to succeed while maintaining the program's rigor. Her efforts caught the attention of higher-ranking officers, who began to see the value of a more inclusive SEAL community. Emily's journey was becoming more than a personal victory. It was a catalyst for institutional change. Yet, despite these gains, Emily remained grounded. She knew that every barrier broken was just one step on a longer road. The true test of her strength and leadership lay ahead. One evening, during a quiet moment of reflection, Captain Harris approached her. "You're changing this program," he said. "Not just with your actions, but with your spirit. Keep leading, Emily. The future depends on it." Emily smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman who dreamed of serving, for every trainee who sought to prove their worth beyond outdated expectations. As the training continued, Emily's story became a legend within the camp, a story of breaking barriers, of resilience, and of leadership forged through adversity. And in that story, Emily found her purpose, not just as a Navy SEAL, but as a trailblazer who showed the world what was possible when courage meets determination. As the days rolled forward, the training camp grew quieter. The early chaos had subsided into a sharp, focused intensity, the kind that precedes a storm. Emily felt the anticipation in the air, a collective understanding among the trainees and instructors that the ultimate challenge was imminent. This was it, the final test. Unlike any previous exercise, the final test wasn't about a single physical feat or isolated mission. It was a culmination, a relentless, multi-day ordeal that would push every trainee to their breaking point, assessing not just skill and endurance, but heart, teamwork, and leadership. The camp's commanding officer gathered the group for a briefing. His voice was steady, eyes scanning the faces of those who had survived months of punishing training. "This is your moment. The final test is designed to simulate real-world combat conditions, isolation, uncertainty, and the pressure to make split-second decisions under fire. Failure is not an option. You will be tested physically, mentally, and morally. Remember who you are and who you've become." Emily's heart raced. This was the moment she had prepared for, the moment she would prove not just to others, but to herself, that she belonged in the elite ranks of the Navy SEALs. The first phase began at dawn. The trainees were dropped into a remote wilderness area, miles from the camp, with limited supplies and no communication. Their objective was to infiltrate a simulated enemy base, gather intelligence, and extract safely. Emily moved swiftly through dense forest and rocky terrain, every sense heightened. The physical fatigue was relentless, but her mind was sharp. She led her team with quiet confidence, relying on instincts honed through months of training. Hours into the mission, the team encountered simulated enemy patrols. The tension was palpable as they crouched behind trees, hearts pounding as footsteps approached. Emily signaled for silence and guided her teammates through a narrow gap, narrowly avoiding detection. As the sun dipped low, the team reached the enemy base perimeter. Using stealth tactics, Emily coordinated the infiltration. Each movement was calculated, every breath measured. The team secured critical intel, maps, communications logs, and enemy schedules. But the real challenge was just beginning. On the extraction route, a surprise simulated ambush tested their reflexes and teamwork. Bullets peppered the underbrush, forcing the team to take cover. Chaos threatened to break their cohesion. Emily's voice cut through the noise. "Stay calm. Cover each other. Move on my mark." Her leadership was steady, inspiring trust and coordination. Under her guidance, the team executed a tactical withdrawal, neutralizing threats and maintaining their mission objective. By nightfall, the team reached a rendezvous point for extraction. But the exercise wasn't over. The final test demanded endurance. The next phase involved surviving through the night in hostile territory with minimal rest and resources. Emily and her team set up a makeshift camp, silently sharing limited rations. Sleep was impossible. The darkness was thick with unseen dangers, every sound amplified in the silence. As the night wore on, exhaustion crept in. Tensions flared. Some team members questioned decisions. Others fought fatigue-induced hallucinations. Emily remained the anchor. She moved among her teammates, offering quiet encouragement and reminders of their shared goal. "We're in this together," she said softly. "We'll get through this." The sunrise brought no relief, only a new set of challenges. The final phase involved a rigorous obstacle course designed to test strength, agility, and mental toughness, all while navigating simulated enemy fire and hazardous terrain. Emily pushed her body to its limits. Each obstacle was a test of willpower, crawling through mud, climbing ropes, swimming across icy water. Her muscles burned, but her determination never wavered. As she neared the final obstacle, a towering wall she had conquered months earlier, the memories flooded back. The free climb, the descent, the leadership lessons. This moment was a full-circle testament to her journey. With a deep breath, Emily began the ascent. Her fingers gripped the rough surface, her body strained upward. The wall was higher, the stakes greater. But she was no longer the uncertain trainee who had begun months ago. She was a warrior. Reaching the top, she pulled herself over and sprinted to the finish line, the cheers of her team and instructors echoing behind her. The final test was complete. During the debriefing, Captain Harris and the commanding officer praised Emily's leadership, resilience, and courage. "You've shown us what it means to be a Navy SEAL," Harris said. "Not just strength and skill, but heart. You've broken barriers and set a new standard." Emily felt a surge of pride and relief. The journey had been long and arduous, but she had proven her place in the elite brotherhood. That night, as she stood beneath a blanket of stars, Emily reflected on her transformation from a nervous recruit to a confident leader. She had faced physical trials, shattered stereotypes, and emerged stronger. The final test was more than a conclusion. It was a beginning, a promise of the challenges and victories yet to come. The final dawn at the training camp broke crisp and clear, casting golden light over the rugged terrain where Emily had spent the past months of her transformation. The exhaustion in her muscles was a distant echo compared to the fire burning within her. Today was the day of graduation, the day she would officially join the ranks of the Navy SEALs, not just as a survivor, but as a trailblazer. The ceremony was held near the shoreline, where the ocean's endless waves symbolized both challenge and renewal. Family members, instructors, and fellow trainees gathered, their faces glowing with pride and anticipation. Emily stood tall, wearing the iconic trident insignia, the symbol of the SEALs, newly pinned on her chest. But the ceremony was more than a personal milestone. For Emily, it was a testament to the countless battles fought against doubt, fear, and deeply ingrained barriers. As the commanding officer stepped forward to address the crowd, his voice carried the weight of respect and recognition. Today, we honor a class of warriors who have earned their place in the world's most elite special forces. Among them stands Emily, who has not only met the highest standards of this program, but has also redefined what it means to be a Navy SEAL. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Emily's eyes scanned the faces of her fellow graduates, comrades who had become family, bonded by the crucible of their shared journey. After the ceremony, as celebrations unfolded, Emily found a quiet moment on the beach. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, a vast reminder of the journey yet ahead. Her thoughts drifted to the past, the early days of doubt, the grueling climbs, the moments when quitting seemed like the only option. She recalled the instructor's words, the camaraderie forged in hardship, and the strength drawn from within and from others. But most of all, she thought of the future. Emily knew that her journey was just beginning. The SEALs were warriors, leaders, and protectors. Their missions would test everything she had learned and demand even more. Yet she carried with her a new purpose, to be a beacon for those who would come after her, to show that barriers, no matter how entrenched, could be broken by courage and perseverance. In the months following graduation, Emily was deployed on missions that challenged her skills and heart in ways she had only imagined. She led teams through hostile environments, making critical decisions that saved lives and shaped outcomes. But beyond the battlefield, Emily also embraced her role as a mentor and advocate. She worked tirelessly to support women in the military, sharing her story to inspire and empower. Her efforts sparked conversations and initiatives aimed at creating a more inclusive and supportive environment within the SEAL community and the broader armed forces. Emily's journey became a legacy, one not just defined by the battles she fought, but by the doors she opened and the lives she touched. Years later, standing once again on a cliff overlooking the ocean, Emily reflected on the path that had brought her here. The climb that once seemed insurmountable, the descent that tested her resolve, the barriers broken, and the final test passed. She smiled, knowing that she had become more than she ever dreamed, a Navy SEAL, a leader, and a pioneer. The waves crashed below, relentless and powerful, just like her spirit. And as the sun set on the horizon, Emily understood that her story was not just her own, but part of a larger tide of change, a tide that would carry others forward, breaking barriers and forging new paths for generations to come. The final chapter in Emily's journey, and the beginning of a new era. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Pacific, casting gold across the waves and touching the rugged cliffs that had once been the site of Emily's greatest test. It had been nearly a year since her first day in the Navy SEAL training program. A year filled with pain, challenge, defiance, and revelation. Now, standing among her graduating class, boots sunk into wet sand, she was no longer the outsider, no longer just a passenger, no longer the one they doubted. She was a SEAL. The trident pinned to her uniform gleamed in the sun, not just a symbol of elite military accomplishment, but a physical emblem of transformation. Around her stood the men and women who had survived Hell Week, countless mental and physical challenges, and the final test, brothers and sisters forged in fire. For most of them, this was a finish line. But for Emily, This moment felt like the start of something far greater. The graduation ceremony, was intentionally understated. No pomp, no parade. Just the presence of family, instructors, commanding officers, and the ocean. As Captain Harris stepped up to the podium, the crowd hushed. "In this line of work," he began, "we don't celebrate individuals often. It's not our way. But sometimes there are exceptions. Sometimes someone walks into this program and changes what we thought was possible." He turned slightly, making deliberate eye contact with Emily. When she arrived, there were doubts. Not because she wasn't strong, but because we weren't sure the program, or the people in it, were ready. But she didn't just survive this training. She led through it. She made us stronger. A pause. The waves behind him broke gently, the sound like applause. She redefined leadership under pressure. She redefined grit. And now, as she takes her place among you, I want everyone here, and beyond, to understand this. She's not the exception. She's the first of many. Emily swallowed hard, her throat tight. The crowd erupted into a standing ovation, instructors, officers, and fellow graduates alike. The first deployment weeks after graduation, Emily was assigned her first real-world mission, a high-risk operation in Eastern Africa involving intelligence recovery and extraction of a diplomat in a volatile region. It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't scripted. It was war. Her unit was small, specialized, and skeptical. Some of them had read about her. A few respected her. Others thought she was there to check a box. That didn't last long. On the first night in hostile territory, Emily's unit came under fire. During the confusion, the team's communication system was damaged, and they became separated from their extraction route. Under pressure, Emily took charge. She improvised a new comm setup using backup gear and coordinated a stealth path to high ground. Through the pitch-black forest, she led them to a rendezvous point under fire, all without losing a single teammate. Back at the forward operating base, her team leader approached her, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. "You saved our asses," he said simply, before extending his hand. "I was wrong about you." Emily didn't gloat. She just nodded. "Let's get ready for the next one." From that mission onward, Emily wasn't just respected, she was trusted. A voice for the voiceless. But Emily knew that survival wasn't enough. Legacy wasn't just about medals or mission reports. It was about opening doors and keeping them open. When she returned stateside after 2 deployments, she was invited to speak at the Naval Academy. She didn't wear dress blues. She wore fatigues, boots still dusty from the field. Before a packed auditorium of cadets and instructors, she spoke not about how she succeeded, but why she did. "I didn't make it through this program because I was fearless. I made it because I wasn't. I made it because I doubted myself every day and did it anyway. Because I knew other people would doubt me too. But what mattered more than muscle or stamina was this: I never quit. Not when they told me I wouldn't make it. Not when they told me I was a distraction. And not when I failed, which I did. This uniform doesn't make you a SEAL. Pain doesn't make you one. What makes you a SEAL, what makes you a warrior, is showing up every day, no matter how heavy your gear is, or how heavy the judgment is. And you lead, even when your voice shakes." When she finished, the room was silent. Not from disinterest, but from reverence. Then came the applause, louder than she'd expected. Some even stood. Cadets, instructors, and quiet skeptics who had come just to see the woman SEAL and left changed. Changing the system, Emily used her growing platform not for fame, but for reform. She worked with senior officers to redesign parts of the selection process, not to make it easier, but to ensure it measured capability over stereotype. She helped launch mental resilience workshops, focused on helping trainees of all backgrounds navigate the psychological toll of special warfare. She mentored young women entering the program, not shielding them from the realities, but preparing them. She told them about the pain, the pushback, the isolation. But she also told them about the pride, the transformation, the moments worth suffering for. Within 3 years, the number of female candidates applying for SEAL training rose by 60%. More importantly, the retention rate increased. Because they had a guide now, a symbol. 10 years later, the ocean hadn't changed. Still wild, still relentless. The same one that had roared below her during her climb. But Emily had. She stood at the top of that same cliff, now a full commander, returning to speak to a new class of trainees. The ropes were still there, the jagged rocks below, but the fear was gone. In its place, clarity. She turned to the assembled class, 43 new hopefuls, young, hungry, terrified. She saw a young woman among them, barely 20, eyes wide with nerves. Emily recognized herself in that expression. You all came here thinking this is about muscle, endurance, or how many push-ups you can do without collapsing, Emily began. But you'll learn soon enough. This is about something far deeper. She paused. It's about who you become when you have nothing left. When your body wants to give up. When the people around you stop believing in you. What will you do then? That's the moment you find out if you belong here. Her voice softened. And when you get there, not if, when, remember something? Pain is the gatekeeper. It's not there to stop you. It's there to ask you, how bad do you want this? Legacy SEALed Emily became more than just a SEAL. She became a symbol of what was possible. Her portrait now hangs in the Hall of Valor, beside the legends of the past. Her name is mentioned in recruitment talks, in classrooms, in boot camps. But if you ask her what mattered most, it wasn't the accolades. It wasn't the missions or the rank. It was the day a girl from her old high school sent her a letter. Asterisk, I saw you on TV during your graduation. My brother told me girls can't be SEALs. I told him they can, because you are. I'm 12 now, but I've started training. I don't know if I'll make it, but I want to try. Thank you for showing me it's possible. Emily kept that letter in her locker, carried it in her rucksack on deployment. Read it before every mission. Because that, more than anything, was the legacy. She wasn't just the first woman to complete the SEAL program. She was the first to show that the mountain can be climbed, the edge survived, the barrier shattered, and that Navy SEALs can, indeed, climb without ropes. Not because they're fearless, but because they refuse to fall.